Okay, I'm going to run an experiment. I've got ChatGPT here running on my phone. I've got Zoom's AI running, and I've got me talking in a cafe, and I'm trying this away from home. This is my third attempt to try and talk through a submission from Resilience Network to the government's inquiry on scaling up community energy. And chat, you don't need to interrupt. I'm just going to talk, but by the time I've finished,
you're creating a great blend of tools and perspectives to refine your ideas. Let me know how I can assist, whether it's providing real-time input, helping to structure your thoughts, or crafting polished text for your submission. Good luck with this run of the experiment. I'm here to collaborate when you're ready.
Great. So just hang in there. No need to interrupt, I think, although it might be illuminating. We've already done this a couple of times before, and we've already got a couple of transcripts that I've fed you, and we've already got the input from Community Energy England and from Energy Local to this inquiry. So we got a lot of input, and at the end of this recording, I will either ask you to churn out the report that we've talked about, or I will feed you the transcript. So either way, you'll get more input, and then we'll discuss. And that input, we'll put that in the comments under the recording on YouTube, so people will be able to access it. So all that's good. So what I'm doing, I'm tearing my hair out here because I think that what Resilience Network is doing is really fantastic, and that we've got some really interesting input. The inquiry is looking at how to scale up community energy. Community energy at the moment stands at about 400 megawatts, and the government is looking to be putting about £400 million a year into community energy as loans. So that could easily generate another 400 megawatts. So it's doubling. So isn't that wonderful? Well, yes, but only a bit, because in the UK as a whole, we've already got about 40 gigawatts of renewable energy. If you add up solar, biomass, onshore wind and offshore wind. That's a figure I got by asking chat anyway. So I've got that list somewhere. And
I'll stay quiet and listen for now, absorbing everything you're saying to shape the final response later. You're setting the scene well, and it's clear you're balancing the government's current ambitions with the much larger potential for scaling community energy. The comparison between 400 megawatts of community energy and the broader 40 watts of renewables really highlights the gap and the opportunity. Keep going. I'm here when you're ready for input or a response.
Great, hang in there because there's more. So the 100 times as much energy that exactly exists already, renewable energy, would be matched by the community because CPRE, the Council for Protection of Rural England, have done a study and they reckon that there's room for 40 or 50 gigawatts of solar energy on the roofs of our cities. So that's pretty much equivalent to what the government is, what we're always...
40 to 50 gigawatts
of
rooftop solar potential is such a powerful number.
How about you follow along without saying anything? Just listen and we'll get there. I hope. This is going to be long enough with just me speaking. Your input is appreciated, but let's get it all at the end. But just before I finish, I'll ask if there's any questions I should fill in. And that's part of the use of having you listen along. And you've already given me questions to answer in earlier goes at doing this. So we've had some input. So communities could multiply the amount of energy they're generating by 2 orders of magnitude, 2 factors of 10, from 400 megawatts to 40 gigawatts, just by putting solar on roofs. And this is where I'm really scratching my hair out, because the implications of that are so blinding and so obvious that I don't see how anybody could not get it and immediately want to do it. The first is that this doesn't involve any grid capacity whatsoever. This is generating solar on roofs and mostly using that inside houses. But if you're not, it's already in the local distribution network and can be spread around a town or a city without even needing to go near the national grid, except on a really strange day. So that's pretty impressive. The other point is that solar generated on people's roofs would immediately convert into savings for households. If we generate wind energy or solar energy on farms and fields or on the ocean, the wind, maybe not solar, that energy has to go in the grid and then be transmitted before it reaches people. Whereas most of the solar that we could generate on roofs could be used by people directly, especially, of course, if we've got storage in the houses. And if we haven't got storage in the houses, then in a short space of time, we would have even more storage sitting around in the streets with electric cars without a direct cost on top of the cost of solar. So that seems like an advantage too. Is there more? Well, yes, we talk about community energy, but often solar farms and wind farms are owned by groups of community investors and stuff like that. But it's not actually the community owning it. Whereas if we do this right and we put solar on our roofs, the community could own it. Everybody who's got solar on their roof, who is just using energy, could be members of a local co-op that is finding the finance for this solar and selling the energy to the customers, selling the energy to the people in the houses. So that's a little bit complicated. I'm going to do another video separately on the topic of what I call third-party billing, which is where we use the energy company as an intermediary to track what's going on in their house. We already did that once with feed-in tariffs. People would have solar on their roofs, and the energy company would track the generation and send them money for having generated solar and put it in the grid or not put it in the grid. You got paid regardless. This is kind of cool. The government cut back on that, so that's not available anymore. But solar is so cheap now that lots of people are buying solar for themselves just to get the savings, but not everybody can afford it. Not everybody even owns their house, owns the roof. And we're saying, well, so let's have the community raise the finance. And having raised the finance, we'll have people buy the electricity from their own roofs that the community put there, but at a big discount. And at the moment, we think the average saving could be something like 30%, which is pretty good. So add all that together. All of the things, I really want to emphasize all of these in our submission to the government. I don't want to say too much about expanding grid capacity. It would be lovely, mind, to have three-phase electricity in every street as standard, and to, by default, allow people more than 3.68 kilowatts of solar on a roof without having to ask for planning permission. We should streamline whatever planning is needed. We should remove the limits. We shouldn't put a cap on rooftop solar. We should encourage people to put as much solar as possible on roofs. And if they can't use it themselves, let's share it. So I think that's kind of enough for a good submission. But I just want to add one piece of startling news that I got the other day. We're looking in, what we've done is we've assembled a really great group of people in Bristol who can do the different pieces of this. legal advice. We've talked to the representatives of the grid locally. We've got solar installers. We've got Bristol's Energy Co-op. We've got Bristol's Energy Network, Community Energy Network. I'm missing someone. Who am I missing? Oh, Future Leap Finance have helped us generate a spreadsheet, and we've checked out the numbers with Bristol Energy Co-op. So we kind of got all the bases covered, including, but not perfectly, how to handle the billing. Energy Local have a really good take on this. With the already got systems where they're sharing generation from a renewable source with members of a community co-op and doing it through the energy bill. We want to make this a regular feature, and I'm going to put more on this in a separate video, because it's actually quite a complex topic. But from the point of view of ordinary people, the answer is, well, it's just going to appear on your energy bill as an extra line. Like if you have gas, that's in your bill, separate from electricity, and if you've got night storage, heating, then the night electricity comes in at a different rate. Well, we show how much solar you've generated, how much you've used, how much is exported, and what the impact is of that on your bill. And we would work within the community. You would be a member of the community co-op that's running all this. So obviously the co-op is going to be motivated to try and get you minimum costs. And the deal is, as time passes, solar will get cheaper, and we'll be able to put more solar on roofs. And just the other day, this is a comment below a different video on YouTube. It's a guy writing in from Australia, and so what we've been budgeting is around 6 or 7, something like £7,500 for 6 kilowatts on a roof, with a chunk of storage as well. In Australia, this guy was saying, well, I've got 13 kilowatts of solar on my roof, and it cost me 4,200 Australian dollars, which is not a lot more than £3,000. So we're talking about 6 kilowatts for £7,500. And in Australia, they're talking about twice as much solar for half the price. Yeah. And we're saying that at the prices we already get, we can save you 30% on your energy bill, and we can pay off the cost of this solar in 15, 20 years. So quite obviously, if we can match Australian pricing, I don't see any reason why we shouldn't be able to match that right now. But suppose it took a few years, we would be able to, at the very least, be able to cut energy bills by 50% and pay off the installation in half the time. And if we've paid for it in 7 years or less, once you've paid off the cost of the installation, you're not needing the income from the electricity to pay off the cost of the solar. So the cost of the electricity can drop yet again. So we were talking initially about 10 pence a unit. If we can get twice as much, if we can make it 50% saving instead of a 30% saving, then we're talking about 7, 8 pence a unit. And then once it's all paid off, we're talking about half that again. So at the moment, what are you paying for electricity? It used to be about 16 pence a unit until the crazy Russian war. And prices have somehow magically doubled to about 30 pence a unit. If we could bring it down to 10 pence a unit by putting solar on people's roofs, that would be a really good start. But if we could bring it down to 7 or 8 pence a unit by getting better pricing, and then 3 or 4 pence a unit by having paid for the solar, then we completely transformed our local economies, and we have created, very importantly, a just energy transition, just as in fair for everybody. In our case, we will even start out by doing, we want to do a solar project starting this next year, we want to put a number of clusters, one in each constituency, so that each of our lovely MPs, that's Darren Jones in Bristol Northwest, Damien in Northeast, we've got Karen Smith in South Bristol, we've got Kerry McCarthy, the Environment Minister in East Bristol, and in Central, my own constituency, we've got Carla Denyer, who's joint leader of the Green Party, and the person who first put up Bristol City Council to the idea that let's get to carbon neutral by 2030 instead of 2050. And all the other councils followed on. And if we were to do this, if in Bristol, this would amount to putting 5 or 6 kilowatts of solar on 90,000 roofs. That would save somewhere in the region of 100,000 tons of emissions a year. And Bristol has a shortfall on its 2030 net zero budget at the moment of 400,000 tons a year. So it sounds as though solar on the roofs would get us quarter of that. It's better than that, because half the electricity generated will go in electric cars. And that will stop emissions from diesel and petrol, which are very high. And did some calculations, well, have to repeat them, but my best guess was, meaning my best guess was ChatGPT's best guess, which is that that's equivalent to about 70,000 cars using electricity, and their emissions would be around 300,000 tons a year. Needs checking, but that sounds like between the energy savings from generating more electricity than the houses would use, and that excess being put in electric vehicles, would pretty much neutralize Bristol's shortfall. So that's all pretty good. So we are talking about this going to a parliamentary committee, but we're also talking about demonstrating to our own MPs within a year what this actually looks like on their patch, and then how we would scale up across Bristol and across the country. Thanks for watching. There will be documents and stuff linked to below this. There's also a link to a playlist with other talks in this series, because this is a series of recapitulations of the components of the plan for how we get to net zero in Bristol, or rather how we get ResNet's project going to give lots of community-owned solar on the roofs of the city. And yeah, please leave any comments below. Come to our website, which is resnet.org.uk, and sign up for solar in your area. And we're really happy to see interest from other areas in the country. And we're really happy to see comments below on the video from anybody who has something to say. That includes whether you like it, whether you've got a criticism, whether you hate it. Everybody welcome. Nothing too rude, please. Thanks a lot. Cheers.